and welcome everyone. We're here today with Bow Live, Brokers, Opens, and Tours Worldwide, and Florida Closing and Escrow, John Ioannou. And today's title talk topic is the closing timeline and how to expedite closings. But first, I just want to give a little introduction to Florida Closing and Escrow. We have a 5-star rating with the Better Business Bureau. Also, John was elected as one of the top 50 real estate attorneys in Florida. So congratulations to John, who does an excellent job. And we have an excellent team from contract to closing to assist you with your title and closing success. Florida Closing and Escrow is mobile, multilingual, wireless, paperless, remote, and goes out of their way to assist you with your title and closing transactions and success. At the end, I will do a brief market update and some tools that can help you as well. So, John, if you'd like to begin with today's topic.
Sure. Thanks, Cindy. Hi, everyone. Today, we're talking about the timeline, and it's a very important topic because this will protect the buyer's deposit. One of the main things we have to do as when we represent our clients, you as realtors and us as title companies, is to protect the buyer's deposit. So one way of doing that is to talk about the timeline and the dates for contingencies and things like that. So I'm going to share my screen, and I have a timeline that I can show you that we use that I highly recommend others to use. So can you see my screen?
Yes, and if anyone needs a copy, feel free to contact me or John.
Right, great. Okay, so as Cindy mentioned, we're Florida Closing and Escrow. Our information's at the top here. July extension. Okay. Our address is here. We're in Sunny Isles Beach. We're the only title company in Sunny Isles Beach. So we service pretty much all of South Florida. We're licensed throughout the state of Florida, so we can also do closings anywhere in the state, and we can utilize mobile notaries for that. My direct number is at the top here, and also my email address. So the timeline, let's get into it. So as Cindy mentioned, we can send this to you. If you have your own, that's good too. Just want to make sure that the dates are correct, and we're going to go through those and how to calculate those. So at the beginning, you can put buyer and seller's information here and include the address. Cash or financing. If it's financing, there's 2 additional contingency periods, right? So obviously the financing contingency period and when you can file for the loan application. So those are 2 additional documents. Let's start with the effective date. When is the effective date? We don't have to guess at it. The good thing is the as-is contract tells us when the effective date is. And where in the contract does it tell us? It tells us at the bottom of page number 1. It says, the effective date of this contract shall be the date when the last one of the buyer and seller has signed or initialed and delivered this offer or final counter offer. And in quotes, this is the effective date. Okay, so a lot of information in this one sentence. Let's go over it really quickly. So it's the date when the last one of the buyer and seller has signed. So if I'm the buyer and I sign today and the seller signs tomorrow, obviously the effective date is tomorrow. And then it goes on to say, or initialed. So if I sign today, I send it to the seller signs tomorrow, makes a change to something and initials it tomorrow and sends it back to me, we still don't have an effective date because me as the buyer, I've just received a counter offer. Anytime a person makes a change to a contract, that's considered a counter offer. And so now I, as the buyer, can accept that change. If I do, I initial it, and the day I initial it is the effective date. If I make another change, let's say we're disputing or we're negotiating over price, I make another change to the price, then I initial it, then we have to wait for the seller to initial that to be the effective date. And this can go back and forth. And I'm sure sometimes you've seen where there's a lot of changes made and a lot of initials made. So it's when the last initial is made, and that's the effective date. Now this line also goes on to say, and delivered. So let's say I sign today, seller signs tomorrow, but I don't get a copy from the seller or seller's agent until the following day. Then it's when I receive a copy of the fully signed agreement. So that's important to you as a realtor. If you do receive signed copies from your client, you have to make sure you email it to the other agent, and that's when the effective date is. So that's very important. So now we know when the effective date is. This is very important because this is when the clock starts to run. So now we go back to our timeline. And so we have the effective date. Let's just say the effective date is today. So our next contingency or our next deadline is when the first deposit is due. And you'll see in this area here, I have kind of listed where on the as-is contract you can find these requirements. So the first deposit due obviously is on page 1, line 28. So we go back to the contract, we go up to line 28. If you leave it blank, it's 3 days. So we go back to our timeline. If the effective date is today, the 4th, we count starting tomorrow. We count the 5th as day number 1. So Friday is 1, Saturday is 2, Sunday is 3. So this is a good example. So we count Saturdays and Sundays because the calculation is calendar days, not business days, unless it falls on a Saturday or Sunday. Then we go to the next business day. So if the effective date was today, the 4th, 3 days is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So the deposit is due on the 8th. And then we'd write that date here underline first deposit. Now the second deposit, if we go back to the contract, if you leave it blank, it's 10 days. Some people like to put a second deposit to make their offer a little bit stronger. You don't have to. If you want to do a little bit of a lesser deposit at first and a stronger deposit at second, you can do that. We get a lot of questions of how much deposit should be. There's no right or wrong answer. It just depends on how strong you want to make your offer. Obviously, if you're putting an offer for $1 million, a $1,000 deposit doesn't seem too realistic. So 5,000, 10,000, 15, 20,000 are all good numbers. I wouldn't go above 10%. 10% is pretty much the limit of how much of a deposit you should put down, the max. So around those numbers, you can put either as a first deposit and or second deposit. If it's blank, it's 10 days. So we'd go back to our timeline. Let's say it's 10 days from the 4th. So let's do the calculations again. 1, starting tomorrow, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Again, we fall on a Sunday. So that means we go to Monday, the 15th. So then we put the 15th here. Now, closing date, that's on page 2, line 53. So we go back to the contract. It's at the top of page 2, line 53. What should the closing date be? It depends on whether it's a cash offer or financing. Cash offers, we as a title company can be ready as soon as 2 weeks. What takes a little bit of time is we need to order a lien search and an estoppel from the association if there is one. Both of those timeframes are around 7 to 10 business days. So if you have a cash buyer, they're looking to close quickly, you can put 2 weeks here. If they're getting a loan, lenders obviously require a lot more time. There's a lot more documents that are needed and approvals from the lender. So I would recommend putting 45 days here. It's best actually to check with the lender. You can ask your buyer how much time the lender needs for closing, and they'll just come out and tell you, we'll need 45 days, maybe we'll need 60 days. So you can put that number there. Another thing you can do is you can either put the actual date, or I recommend putting on or before, and if it's cash, 14 days. If it's a loan, on or before 45 days. Because let's say I submit an offer today and I want to close in 30 days, and I put actually June 3rd. I write in June 3rd here as a closing date. But the negotiations go back and forth, and it took a week to finalize the contract. So now, if I still have June 3rd here, and we really have an effective date of May 12th, I've already lost a week. And if I'm getting a loan, that's a very important time, because now I've just crunched everything down by 3 weeks. And the lender definitely is going to need more time. So it's best to put on or before and put actual numbers here instead of the actual date. So we go back to the timeline, and if you do that, you can put the date there. If there is a loan, we go to page 2, line 89. And as we talked about, best to check with the lender how much time they need. You'd be checking off the financing contingency period here. You'd be checking off 8B. And 30 days if left blank. As I mentioned, I recommend 45 days, but best to check with the buyer's lender for that. And that timeline date would go back here. Now, the inspection period, very important. This is on page 5, line 261. See, I've actually put it in order of the contract pages. Obviously, inspection can go up here, but I don't like to go back and forth when I'm doing the calculations. So I put it as per the contract, where it is on the contract. So we go all the way down to page 5, and we look for the inspection period. This is under paragraph 12. Line 280, 260. Okay. This is the property inspection and also right to cancel contingency. If you leave it blank, it's 15 days. I don't recommend leaving it blank, even though if you want 15 days, I recommend putting 15 days here. We don't want anyone changing that or revising it later if it's blank. So it's always best to put in a number, and I do recommend 15 days. If you want to make your offer a little bit stronger, I have seen 10 and I have seen 7. Obviously, that's going to put more pressure on your buyer to contact an inspector, to get him out to the property, and then to get a report back within that certain time frame. So 10 to 15 days would be best. I have received questions of, do we have to do an inspection? The answer is no. This is also a right to cancel section. So you can still cancel during this time frame, whatever time frame you put here, without doing an inspection. And this right to cancel is, you have an absolute right to cancel in buyer's sole discretion. So you don't have to have a reason. You don't have to say, well, we did an inspection and we found these problems and we're canceling for that. No, this is an absolute right to cancel during this time frame. So whatever date that is, you go back to the timeline and you put it here, end of inspection period. And also something to point out, the walkthrough is also something very important, and the buyer is entitled to it. This is on the top of page 6, line 275. On the day prior to the closing date or on the closing date prior to time of closing, buyer or buyer's representative may perform a walkthrough of the property. This is very important. I highly recommend doing that for several reasons. You just want to make sure that everything is okay with the unit. Things that are there are still there, like the appliances. They didn't remove the refrigerator. There's no damage to the unit. There's no tenant in the unit. You want to make sure all of this is resolved before signing of the documents, because once closing happens, the property is now the buyer's, the seller has received their money, and good luck trying to find the seller or reach the seller. They're not going to answer your phone calls. So if there's any issues, we need to resolve them prior to closing. So walkthroughs are very, very important. I highly recommend doing those. And then finally, as we talked about, all dates are calculated in calendar days and based on where the property is located. So if the buyer or seller is in a different country and it's a different day or time there, we work off of the Eastern Standard Time Zone here in Florida. And as I mentioned, if a date shall end on a Saturday, Sunday, and national legal holiday, so if Monday happens to be a holiday, then you go to the next calendar day. And what does calendar day mean? It means 11:59 p.m. of that day. So you have the whole day to send an email notifying the other party of anything that you need to notify them about, of any cancellation or extension request or anything like that. The extensions must be signed by the end of that day, or if there is a cancellation notice, that cancellation notice must be given before 11:59 of that last day here. And what else do you have to do as a realtor in preparation for a closing? It's best to give the buyer an inspector. If you know of any good inspectors, I recommend giving at least 2 so you don't get locked into one in case that one does a bad job. Also get the association application from the listing agent or the association themselves to give to your buyer if there is an approval process required. And also get the condominium documents from the listing agent. This will show what the rules and regulations are of the association. It'll also provide the financials, which are important to some buyers to find out if there are reserves, which will help explain if there's going to be any special assessments coming up. So this is the document that you can prepare, but also the good news is if you go to our website, here's our website, floridaclosing.com, and if you go to more, we have a date calculator that you can click on. And what you can do is fill in the blanks and it'll do it for you. So if you have an effective date of today, you put in May 4th, and then everything gets automatically populated. These are the defaults on the contract we just talked about. So default 3 days is due on 5/7. So what you do is you check here, is it a Saturday or Sunday? Yes, it is a Sunday. So then you click on 8. And boom, it's taken care of right there. Next, 10 days automatic on the contract. So you'd click on the date icon here. You'd make sure what day that is. This is on a Sunday again. So you click on the 15th. Closing date, if it's 30 days, automatically here 6/3. Loan approval, if it's 30 days, is also 6/3. As we recommended 45 days, you can type in 45, and then it's automatically populated of when the loan approval is due. Take a quick look on when that date is, and boom, again, another Sunday. So move that to Monday. Loan application, the default is 5 days on the contract. Take a quick look on when 5/9 is. That's a Tuesday, so you're good to go there. And then the inspection period, very important, 15 days if it's left blank, it's already populated. We'll take a quick look on when 5/19 is. That's a Friday, so we're good to go there. And then if there's an association application, we must get that application in 5 days, and that's 5/9. Quick look, and that's a Tuesday. If there's any additional dates that you'd want to add or anything like that, you can put those here. And then you can email it directly to the client, or you can email it to yourself, or you can print the screen. If you email it to yourself, it comes in an email, and it looks like this. Get an email from us, and it has an exact list of all the due dates, when they're due, and then you can forward that to your client with a little note that says, see below timeline calculator, make sure that you follow the timeline and whatnot. So that's a little added bonus that we have here at floridaclosing.com. So if you need to, please check out our website.
And John, anything you could recommend to expedite the closing as well? I would think it's smart to stay in close contact with all the parties involved with the transaction, obviously with the title company, and if there's a lender, and the both realtors stay in good communication, And if there's condo approval needed, to do that as soon as possible, and, stay in touch and get answers as quickly as possible. And anything else you want to add?
Yeah, the best way to expedite things is to get the inspector out there quickly, as soon as possible, because sometimes the inspection results can raise issues, and then there's some negotiation that can go back and forth between buyer and seller. Number one, a buyer even wants to move forward. If they do, they'll ask the seller for a credit. The seller can give a credit if they want to or not. So it's best to get the inspection done as soon as possible. Obviously, get the application for the association, because sometimes association will take 30 days for an approval process. So the quicker you get the application into the association, the better. And those are the best ways to expedite. And just if you can stay on top of your clients, just say, how's everything going? Do you have any questions? And if they do have any questions, feel free to have them contact us if there's any title or legal questions. And that would help the process move along nice and smooth.
Right. And we do try to accommodate closing locations, time preferences, and so forth. Our goal is to meet or exceed your closing needs for either residential and or commercial transactions. And the buyer could be in state, out of country, and or a first time buyer, and we will assist with all of that as well. Our goal is a smooth and timely transaction, and we have a great team to assist you. 1-800-FL-CLOSE, and I could be reached at 786-457-6832. And I just want to give a brief market date, because actually John has to go off for a luxury closing. And currently there's been a few rate hikes, and also mortgage rules have been affected. However, Florida still ranks among the best states to live in, and we have not seen that much of a reduction of transactions. And actually, per U.S. News and World Report, Florida is number 10 on the list of desirable states. And this was based on over 70 metrics in the analysis, and thousands of data information. And some of the factors that made us number 10 include, of course, the weather, of course, the tourism, our robust agriculture, and no personal income tax. And we are after Utah, Idaho, Washington, Nebraska, Minnesota, New Hampshire, Iowa, Wisconsin, Vermont, and then Florida. And also we have a rating of number 1 for higher education, based on the fact that there's high enrollments in University of Florida, Florida State, and University of Miami is one of the best private institutions in the U.S. And Miami also is one of the most important and 5th highest ranking states for the world's wealthiest, after London, New York, LA, and Hong Kong. And just to give you a few quick examples, Lauren Ellison paid $173 million for a Palm Beach home. Bob Stiller sold his property for $170 million, and he had purchased that for $25 million in 2014. Howard Stern, who bought a $52 million estate next door, has his property now estimated to be worth at least $300 million. It's 325 acres and 40,000 combined square feet of living. And in April 2023, it was labeled a buyer's market, decreased transactions by only 1.3% from the prior month, but up 58.6% from the same time last year. And one other commercial transaction is that the former Miami Herald property has been sold for $1.225 billion to the Terra Group. And this is going to elevate access to the waterfront property and the downtown Miami area. So those are just quick updates of some of the activity that we're seeing locally. And John, you want to add anything to that about the transactions in the market, luxury or otherwise?
Yeah, as you correctly stated, this is a lot going on in South Florida. I know we'll see headlines about national news and certain things going on nationally, but here locally in South Florida, business is very well. People are still coming to the area, and it's a good time to invest here in South Florida.
And we'd love to help you with your title and closing success. And also, we have tools to help you with the smooth closing and to increase your business. You can contact me for details. We have AI and digital targeted automated marketing, so you could get leads at your fingertips. We have live opens and tours with Bow and more. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you, John. And we hope to hear from you soon. Thank you again.